Okay. But what's the learning curve? Is it difficult? Can you learn it fast? Do I have to hire a bunch of people? Am I going to have to start negotiating salaries like the Cowboys are doing right now for a defensive end? Where are these people who know AHV? Am I going to have to pay them a fortune? But don't take it from me. AHV is easy. It's easy to learn. I'll tell you, this quick little anecdote. When I came to work at Nutanix, I learned about the management console. It's called Prism. Everything's in Prism. Everything gets managed from Prism. And I thought to myself, oh man, that sounds tough. Maybe I don't want to do that because that sounds like a disaster. The all-in-one management console. I'd seen that story before. I watched that movie. I was part of it and I didn't like it. But Prism was amazingly easy to learn. AHV was amazingly easy to learn. And so you take it from big customer JetBlue, who said it took less than a week to become comfortable with AHV. Right? That's so easy. It took me 4 weeks just to figure out my phone, and I had to have my kids help me over and over again. That's the reality. AHV is built into the platform. We make things easy. This same manager who said learning this was easy, and this is a big company, went on to say that they needed three different admins to manage their previous environment: one for storage, one for VMware, and another for for networking, all working in silos, right? It's got to be easy, right? One of our customers is the Chicago Bears, right? So let me just tell you, like it's got to be easy on for the Chicago Bears to figure it out.
Yeah.
Go Bears, right? I think Ben's a Bears fan, right?
I'm
So I had
disgruntled. I'm a realistic Bears fan. I'll tell you that much.
I had to I had to take a swipe at them. But hey, they're a Nutanix customer, so I can't be too hard on them. But how painful is it to migrate, right? Well, this starts with deciding whether or not you're going to let Choice Solutions lend a hand, because if you have no idea what you're doing, or if an idea for moving is all you've got, you could probably use a coach, a good coach, right? A coach like Nutanix. Now, when you look at a migration, a lot of times this is probably, in my opinion, in my experience, the biggest blocker to adoption. You're scared, right? It looks risky. What if it doesn't work? Indecision will absolutely paralyze an organization, right? Like fear, just paralysis, right? Or you get into analysis paralysis, right? There was a saying that you don't get fired for using VMware, right? Years ago. I don't know if any of you had ever heard that saying, but remember also before VMware came out, or right when VMware came out, people with who were looking at VMware were like, oh no, you are going to have to pry my physical servers out of my cold, dead hands. But then they realized that virtualization had a great deal of value. And now we're faced with the solution or this issue where you have 20 years worth of tooling with VMware, and people are just really hanging on to it. And it's because they love it so much. It's because they're afraid that it's going to be hard to move to a new platform. Well, keep in mind, like we make things easy, we make that easy too. We give you tools to make this easy. When I say we give you tools, I mean we quite literally give you the tool that makes this easy. It's a tool that we call Move, right? Very clever name, Move. We used to call it Extract. And as a person who hates going to the dentist, Extract just kind of gave me the willies a little bit. I'm glad they changed it to Move. But we use Move as a tool to move VMs from VMware over to AHV. Very easy. We've been working on this for a long time. This is not something that we just dreamt up about the time that Broadcom decided to buy VMware. It was way before that. We started really early on this. And so um, we continue to develop this tool. We continue to make it faster, better, easier, more efficient. more intuitive, right? And Nutanix Move, as I said, it has a very proud history. I was talking to a customer recently at a golf tournament and in Minneapolis, and the weather was beautiful. It wasn't like scorching hot like it is here in Texas. Anyway, the customer was saying that they are using Move. They adopted AHV. They kind of started small. They kind of got their feet wet with it, realized that they liked it, put some workloads on it, and then when that next renewal came up, they decided to go, or before that next renewal for VMware came up, they decided to go all in on Nutanix. Right now, they migrate 1,000 VMs a week. 1,000. They have 70,000 VMs overall that they want to migrate to Nutanix. And they are currently doing 1,000 per week. They're convinced that they could do more than 1,000 per week, but they're limited on staff, and so they don't want to go too crazy. But that's just an example of how people are moving these workloads over to AHV. And the migration process is actually very easy. Sorry, my crazy Uncle Walter is trying to call me. I got a story about him, but I'm not gonna tell that story today. Everybody has a crazy Uncle Walter, right? Anyway, he calls you and he asks you questions about things because Google is not his friend. Anyway, so this migration process, like where does it start, right? You go through a wizard, right? We make it easy. We go through a wizard. You select a source, you select a target, you go through the wizard. It creates a run book for you. It creates a migration plan for you. It synchronizes all the data between the old stuff and the new stuff. And then when you're ready, you click a button called cutover, right? It's right there with a little purple dot on it. You click cutover and everything gets cut over. Everything you've put in that plan gets cut over. If it doesn't cut over correctly, you fail it back because all you really did was turn off the original, turn on the new one. So this is not a live migration. I just want to make that clear right now. Unless you're going from Nutanix to Nutanix, it's not a live migration. If you're going from 3-tier VMware to Nutanix, it is not a live migration. But you hit cutover, and if it doesn't cut over correctly, or an individual VM doesn't cut over correctly, you can just fail it back. It's back up and running over here. All good. You figure out what went wrong, right? Modify whatever you need to modify and go for it again. So you just kind of ease into it, and then you can just like really start knocking them down. There is also the opportunity for those of you who run Nutanix on ESX now, you could do an in-place conversion. A lot of people are afraid to this. We've put tons and tons and tons of work into making sure that in-place conversions go smoothly. And there's an anonymous quote here. It was me that made the quote. Just kidding. It wasn't me. But sometimes customers don't want to be identified because then everybody calls them and asks them lots of questions, right? So the migration portion, the move portion, very easy. But will your apps run on it? Right. So that's the next question people tend to ask. Will my apps run on this? And is it going to be performant? Is it going to be resilient? Right. Well, let's take a look. I talked to you about the fact that VDI was kind of our first big killer workload. And there's a reason for that, right? VDI as a workload, very, very demanding on your infrastructure, very demanding on servers, very demanding on storage, very demanding on networking, combining all together so that the desktops have local access to the storage. And guess what? You've unlocked that IO bottleneck, right? That was always the performance killer for VDI. It was the IO bottleneck. We got away from that, but as time went on, we discovered that VDI started not adoption, but the preponderance of VDI as a workload throughout all of the Nutanix customers was all of a sudden, or over time, really, not all of a sudden, was overshadowed by mission critical workloads, right? People discovered that not only was Nutanix fast, but it was very, very resilient. So people started putting those mission critical workloads on Nutanix. And that's probably the majority of the workloads that we have out there right now. We refer to them as business critical. Okay. But AHV has this massive ecosystem. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of companies who kind of sat on, VMware and were like, yeah, we don't need to develop for anybody else. Now they're going, oh, hey, guess what? We need to get our virtual appliance ported over to Nutanix. We need to make sure that our application is compatible with AHV. And so you can see that that number is growing very rapidly. So over 1,200, over 1,100 solutions validated on AHV. I think 2 years ago, that number was like in the 700 range. So you can see how fast this has been going.